Public housing is equally challenging, if not more. There's a shortage of housing in Montgomery County in general. That's driving the price of property up, and it's adding to the problems you were describing in terms of families not being able to afford houses, not being able to live close to where they work, not being able to live next to public transportation, and it's creating another set of problems in Montgomery County. What are your views on public housing?
Look, it's a question that's very personal to me, because you have to understand, during the pandemic, I worked. I worked next to my staff. I have a restaurant. And I have a general manager. So my restaurant, I'm running for council. My general manager's there. I go in, I do some of the bookkeeping still, but I'm physically not there. During the pandemic, I was there on the front lines, with my employees. I wasn't sitting behind a desk or behind a computer. But I can tell you that was the biggest factor in the amount of people that we lost here in my district. We're one of the hardest hit districts in the entire state. 20902, Wheaton. So what happened is people cannot afford to live where they work. And for that reason, we have the situation where you'll have 8 people in an apartment that's made for 4. And that's what happened. We saw one person got sick, and all of a sudden 8 people got sick. And we saw it across the board. So there's a direct correlation between affordable housing and the deaths that we incurred here in my district. So to me, it's something that it's a challenge that's not right. It's not something that's come up right now. Every year, the problem is every year we fall further behind. We're not building enough affordable units. And honestly, there's not a path to ownership anymore. There used to be condominiums, and, there's some in Aspen Hill. They're very limited. Sometimes people buy them as investments and they rent them out. So we have to start looking honestly also at paths to ownership, condominiums, duplexes. We have to look at different options where people can actually build wealth, because, one of the biggest challenges we have is generation. We don't have generational wealth for a lot of our folks. We're finding that, the younger people now, they're not even thinking about ownership because they don't see it on the horizon. If they want to live in a hip, cool area, the metropolitan area in DC, I hope Wheaton's considered. We're definitely working on it.
It has to be considered a hip area.
Yeah, so we're working on it, but that's why, we have a lot of work, for that. But a lot of people are they're just disillusioned. They don't see themselves ever buying anything, and that's what we're having. That's what we're having. We're having people moving further and further and further away. When I got out of college, I moved to Gaithersburg. That's all I could afford. And now if I think about it, if I was in college right now and I was leaving college and I wanted to go to my first house, I couldn't even afford Gaithersburg right now. Gaithersburg is getting crazy expensive as well. So I think for the council, that's going to be the biggest challenge, making sure that we provide a lot more affordable housing, and also making sure that we keep the affordable housing that we have. We have the moderately priced dwelling unit, program, but a lot of people don't even qualify even for that. They can't even afford that. So if our programs that are supposed to help, lower income people are still out of their reach, then we have to really reevaluate, what we're doing. But I know, it's like, the Multicultural Arts Center that I talked about, one of the things that they want to do is build some residential units on top of it, and that's, we have to start thinking that way. We have to start thinking about, especially if it's going to be in the heart of Wheaton, we have to, if we're going to be doing something that the county's going to be involved in, then we have to make sure that we think ahead and we think about, all of these issues that we're having, especially with affordable housing. I know there's a big project called the Gateway Project that's being built on University Boulevard and Beersmore Road, which is where back in the day, the Howard Johnson was, and, right next to the McDonald's there in front of the mall. That's going to bring a ton of units, but we have to make sure, and this is what we're trying to make sure that they do, is they also offer units that are family friendly. Most of the apartments that have been built, traditionally in the last like 10 years are 1-unit apartments, one or 2 bedroom. There's a lot of families that want to live near the metro. There's no 3-bedroom options anymore. Nobody's thinking about that because you're thinking about the high end, what the most they can get for that 1 bedroom. So when you're paying $2,000, which is what a lot of people make in a month, there's no way they can afford that. And living where you work should not be a privilege. It should be a right. So that's something that right now I'm talking to a lot of different candidates. So for me, it's also creating these relationships. And honestly, I'm talking to the current, the county council members, so that when I get into that, when I become a candidate, when I become a county council member, we're already ready to start, hit the ground running, so those are conversations that I'm already having with a lot of folks, because it's not going to be something that I'm going to be able to solve by myself, because we're going to have 11 people that are going to be voting on this stuff. And part of what I'm doing right now is making sure that I'm building those relationships with the people that I believe, are candidates that are going to get elected, come next year.